You may have realized that being healthy feels different than it did in the past now that you're over 50. If you want to maximize your health potential but don't have time to read through overwhelming pages of Google links, this is the show for you. Welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. We love doing the research, finding solutions, talking to health experts, and learning what works and what doesn't. Now, your host. She spent the last 25 years dedicated to feeling her best and is here to share her best findings with you, Susan Rosen.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and my guest today is Mikelann. Oh, I've got your first name and I don't have your last name here. I'm doing real well today. Valterra.
Mikelann Valterra.
Valterra. Okay. And Mikelann is an author, keynote speaker, and money coach, which I think we all could probably use, who helps women transform their relationship with money to create a life they love. And with that, I'm going to ask Mikelann to kind of introduce herself with a few more details about who she is and what she does.
Great. I'm so happy to be here today. I enjoy your podcast. So this is going to be a fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a money coach, and I have been a money coach for, believe it or not, 25 years. And the reason I say it that way is, a lot of people, Susan, they've never heard of money coaching. They think it's a brand new field. And in some ways it is. It is a newer profession. But I've been doing this for 25 years. I've written books, I've taught courses, like many of us, done many things over my career. But I think that the easiest way to start is just to share with your listeners, what is money coaching? Is it okay if I just kind of real quickly?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
So it used to be that when people wanted to get help with money, they would either go to a financial planner if they wanted help with investments, or maybe a credit counselor if they wanted help with debt. But, the truth is most people want help in both areas. They're trying to deal appropriately with credit, but they do have net worth that they're also trying to build. And the other piece is neither of those fields does well with the emotional or the psychological side of it. And, whether you're a man or a woman, everybody has a lot of feelings about money. And there is, as we all have heard by now, a big piece around the psychology of money. So what money coaches do is we look at both the practical and the emotional. So I teach people how to manage their cash flow. And then, the way that I think it's more fun to say is, how do you create a nourishing spending plan so that you can plan where you want your money to go? And how do you create the life that you most want using money? Right. So I refer to a lot of investment planners and all that, but I don't do investments. I'm looking at how do we create a life that you want using the cash flow that you currently have. Okay. And then, if it was that easy, we'd all do it. So then we get into what's really going on. And that's everything from looking at emotional spending to sometimes earning issues to sometimes couples have a hard time talking about money. There's all sorts of stuff around money besides just the practical nuts and bolts of, let's look at where we spend our money.
Yeah. Besides just looking at the bank account and what the number is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So what, actually the question that comes to mind, which is probably a funny question, but do you find, and maybe it's just because of the clientele you've created, do you find more people midlife, right? Like around 40s or something, or 30s that come to you for help? Or is it more when people start getting older and they're not exactly sure what to do with their money?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, kind of the demographic. I specialize in working with people in midlife. And so that's sort of my passion, and I work with a lot of people. And I like to say, I love working with people that are really rocking it in midlife, but money is one piece that is the stressor for them. But as you and I know, everyone often identifies with all sorts of money stress, and money stress or issues or problems really don't know any demographic in particular, right? When I was a newer money coach, I tended to work with younger people. And, the issues do change over time. When I have clients that are already technically retired, then sometimes the issue is, okay, I know that I'm okay if I only spend X amount per year, like I'm thinking of different clients that say, I have a financial planner and they tell me don't spend more than X amount, because all their investments are set in their retirement years and Social Security and things like that.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done, right? And so stressor sometimes is, how do we create a life that really works given the retirement cash flow that we are now living with? So, it just depends on what age and stage or chapter of life that we're in. I have a lot of women that come in and work with me after a divorce. So that's obviously its own chapter, as they say. But, everybody identifies with very similar money issues.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, it always comes down to money in, money out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or money out and then running around trying to find some money to come in, right?
Right. Yeah. And, lifestyle is a big deal, trying to figure out how to create a life that works with your income. And, there's a lot nowadays around, are we keeping up with the Joneses versus let's look at what makes us happy and live life according to our own values. But, there often is a lot of pressure. And, I think, Susan, that's sometimes where the demographics comes in, because younger people struggle with that more because of social media. They are comparing themselves a lot with and images that they see versus Generation X and older, not as tied in to social media. So we're not quite as affected by what the Joneses are spending, because we don't spend as much time on Instagram or Facebook.
Right. And how out of curiosity, how did the pandemic impact your working with clients?
Another interesting question. What I found, and this will make sense to everyone as soon as I say it, a lot of people, on the one hand, there was a lot of stress initially because some people were losing jobs. I had different clients that salaries were cut. And then in a lot of the professional classes, things evened out and salaries came back. They didn't lose their jobs. Some people were tasked with working even harder at their jobs. They were very stressed around having to work at home. But a lot of people didn't spend a lot of money because they didn't travel. A lot of the big discretionary things like traveling, and even to a degree like home remodeling, you couldn't get the remodeler to come to the house.
Right.
So a lot of big spending got delayed, which is now you're seeing a lot of people like, oh my gosh, let's pop the cork and go to Europe or something like that. On the other hand, issues came up like online shopping went through the roof. Some of that's very practical, but that also can become very emotional when you're stressed and can't leave your house. Some people really fell into spending money on Amazon as a way to kind of get a feel-good hit. And that's mixed with a lot of practical things as well, right? So that's why it can be a little bit hard to get your arms around it.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of people now that are kind of caught in between, because so many people are still working from home, but they can go out and do things.
Exactly.
It's just kind of
we're in such an odd place, aren't we? Yeah. I mean, I've got clients all over the world, but I live in Seattle. And so it has been interesting to see the very, very large company, Amazon, is here.
Oh, yeah.
In Seattle. Microsoft is here. I mean, all the big tech players. And, a lot of them have not brought people back the way they had predicted that they would, or when they would. And we still don't know how it's going to go. And it's like, well, a lot of people are still working from home, and some people really like that and some people don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just heard actually last night on a program, I can't remember what it was, a news or what, and they were saying that nationwide 55% of working people are working from home. That's for the whole country. For the Bay Area, which I'm sure is probably a lot like Seattle, it's a lot higher. It's a lot higher. It's like 70 something percent. And
it's fueled spending in all sorts of interesting ways, right? Because now you've got people that are so used to working at home that like it and don't want to go back, and they're building out, extra offices or bedrooms, or it's affecting where they live, or where they now can live. And for me, I'm a good example because I had an in-person office as a money coach. I saw lots of people, via Zoom. A lot of my clients live in Seattle, but I did see some people in person. But it's really interesting, Susan, as the pandemic, I don't know if we want to say it's over or not, everyone We'll talk about that in a different way,
It's
right?
morphing, right? It's morphing.
It's morphing. Oh, you know what? That's a great way to say it. But what I found was my clients got so used to Zoom, my local client got so used to Zoom that I found myself commuting at times into my office just to sit on Zoom all day, right? So after many, many, many years, gave up my outside office and went totally virtual. And I think it's just as a result of what we're talking about. So, I mean, we're all impacted, in different ways like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too. I know, again, here in the Bay Area, San Francisco in particular, they've lost so many businesses, restaurants, all that, because nobody's coming into the offices. So nobody's going to lunch. Nobody's going to dinner. No, all of these things, the retailers are not getting the walk-in. And it's impacted the whole area economically, and it's so funny. Who knew,
Right.
Nobody thought that was going to happen, but people got used to being at home.
They did. They really did. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get back to talking about helping people with working with their money, assuming that money is still coming in, because that's a whole different issue if they got
right.
Yeah, which Amazon's been doing that, and I think Microsoft has as well, just recently laid off a lot of people.
Yeah, there have been layoffs for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people stress around money. The APA, the American Psychological Association, did an interesting study in 2020 where they really identified money as one of the top 3 stressors for people. And, I'm looking at the exact numbers. 2 in 3 adults identified money as one of the top 3 sources of stress. And, this was done from like 2019 data, I believe. So it wasn't all about the pandemic. That money is just a huge source of stress for many American adults. And stress is even greater for women than it is for men. So you probably heard the studies about, how few people can afford to pay an expense if it's over $400, things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Savings rate is very low in the United States. And I'm not even talking about retirement savings. I'm talking about, cash savings. So there's a lot of pain around people's relationship to money. And that, that's where I come in around money coaching and really trying to help people not be stressed around money. And part of it is many people are stressed because they're in what I call a money fog, that they don't know where they're spending their money. They're unhappy. They're stressed, right? But it's almost like a free floating anxiety. And they don't know how much they spend. They don't know where the money goes. It also means they don't know how much they need to earn. So there's a lot of ways of looking at money fog, but if you don't know what you owe in credit card debt, if you don't know what you have in investments, if you don't know what you spend eating out, so on and so forth, if you're in a money fog, it really exacerbates financial stress. We're afraid to look, but not looking makes the stress even worse, right? It makes it even worse. And the way that I think about it is, if you're in a money fog, it's kind of like, since you're, San Francisco, I remember when I lived there, Daly City was so foggy, and I'd never driven in such dense fog. And, so if you're in a money fog, it's not a matter of, are you going to hit something? It's a matter of, what are you going to hit and how bad is it going to be? So the more you can help people get clear and get out of the fog, the more their financial anxiety goes down, and the more peaceful they feel. And, it can feel a little bit counterintuitive, Susan, because sometimes people feel like, but I'm afraid of what I'll see if I track my spending, for example. But what we know is, when you do track your spending, your stress around money actually goes down, because you start to feel control of your money. And that's, that's huge, because financial stress really can go all the way to impacting our health.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge stressor, and a lot of people don't even realize it.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's almost like the air you breathe. We're so used to feeling anxiety, like this low level chronic free floating anxiety around money that looks like, as opposed to what? Of course, people are stressed about money. You don't really name it, but it really takes up a lot of almost psychic energy. I know that sounds kind of weird, but just takes up a lot of space in our heads, worrying and running numbers and can we afford this? And what if there was a way to not be stressed around money? And I think that's the beautiful thing, and why I'm so passionate about money coaching is it lifts people out of that financial stress so that you can breathe clearer and just be happier.
Oh, absolutely. And feel a little better sense of control, I think, in your own life is something that so many people just don't feel that, and not just in money, right? I mean, it's like in so many different areas, and it all kind of compounds. Do you find that it's easier? I'm not exactly sure how to say this, that it's easier for people to get control or on top of or understanding their money situation if it's just them as opposed to being part of a couple?
Oh, that's a juicy question. Yes, I do think it's easier in some ways. I mean, it kind of gets into couples and money, right? And one of the interesting things about couples and money is we all have what I would call a money personality. We all have different motivations around money, and the most common would be people that are motivated by, well, the two most common would be you're motivated by freedom or you're motivated by security, what I call like the safe harbor personality versus the liberty personality. That's kind of what I would call it. Liberty personality just really wants to feel free, and the point of money is to do what I want when I want, enjoy life. But a safe harbor personality feels like money is to feel safe and feel protected and know that I'm okay. And they're both positive. There's nothing wrong with either of these personality types. But what's interesting about couples is half of all couples are made up of someone who is this liberty personality marrying a safe harbor, right? Opposites attract. And so that's why couples and money gets particularly interesting, because you have these two very different people who love each other often very much. And, I find that when couples initially get together, if they are this opposites attract, it doesn't have anything to do with money, right? Initially, it's like, oh my gosh, he's so exciting and wow, and I just never have had so much fun. Or she's so grounded and she just feels so, I feel so safe. So it's not about money initially, but when couples really engage in a relationship and money comes up, if they are around money, then that is one of the things that has to be worked out in terms of, who gets to decide how they spend their money. It's not just about, do we have enough? How do we make our expenses fit our income? That conversation assumes two rational people sitting down and having that discussion. Right. So, but if you're very different, you can have really different priorities, and who's to say one person's is more important than the other?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's so many different scenarios, especially when you do get into people who are older, right? There may be kids involved.
Yeah.
They meet and get together with somebody else, and people with the kids want to take care of the kids as part of their program.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole phenomenon of what is it called nowadays? Gray divorce. Can't remember the term, where so many people are divorcing and remarrying later and later in life. And I think I'm probably an example of that, because I repartnered. I'm engaged right now, and so here I am remarrying in whether we're in our 50s or our 60s, and I'm coming with, we each have our own house. We each have our own assets. We each have children, right? I mean, we have whole lives that, how do we combine this around money? What's joint and what's not joint? And, we have decades of doing money our own way. And guess what? Here we are together, so it's, exactly. So it really brings up, and, I laugh because, I'm a money coach, and, my is Robert. And it's an interesting, and he would talk about it in different ways, but to marry a money coach who's like, hey, let's talk about money. Let's talk about money. He's like, which he loves on the one hand, but he was never partnered with someone who was so comfortable talking about like, hey, let's get on the same page about, right?
Yeah.
So we all have different histories.
Yes, exactly. And it's and it impacts so much when you're older and doing this, right? The repartnering, whether you get married or not.
Right.
You probably have a house, you maybe buy a house together or whatever. But there's so much because there's like, okay, if you're doing a will, right?
Right.
I mean, do we do separate wills? Do we do one will with different pieces to it? It gets so complicated. It gets so complicated.
We just had this conversation the other day where, if something happens to him or to me, how are our grown children going to feel about some of our assets going to mom and dad's new wife or new husband? There's now you're adding grown children into the mix who had always assumed that they would inherit X or Y.
That's right. Yep.
Right. So it's like, it just is a very, very interesting conversation. And yet it's so common nowadays because, as you and I know, the U.S. divorce rate is at about 50%. So, and of course, nobody thinks they will divorce.
Of course not.
Of course not. Not me. Of course not. Right.
No.
But 50% is pretty high. So
yeah, I think so. And some people are kind of serial divorcing people, which makes it even crazier. Crazier.
Definitely. Yeah. When you bring money into it, oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah.
I personally think, and obviously I'm a money coach, but one of the highest, holiest, and most helpful tools for people to be happy in their marriages is to be able to work with some form of joint spending plan, to be able to jointly look at their money and have a tool, and I'll use that word because the word is fairly neutral sounding, that says, okay, here is February. What would we like to spend our money on this month? And then have a way of looking at where we're actually spending our money. So each person has a voice. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's also an area of huge intimacy because, it's the fact that people are more comfortable talking about sex than they are about money, right?
That's really scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so true. And yet we know it's true. And you see it with, women friends will talk about all sorts of personal things, but often not money.
Well, that's also true. Absolutely. It's one of those, not anyone else's.
Right. Well, and that's the attitude, right? If it's not anyone else's business, then we have this area in our life that's hugely important, money.
Yeah.
But there often is so much secrecy around it. And part of the dilemma is often we think, okay, then everyone else knows what they're doing. Everyone else has it figured out. And there's, a lot of adults carry a lot of shame or frustration around money, feeling like they're the only ones who don't know how to manage it well or how to, I hate the word budget, but whatever word people want to use, I would personally use the word spending plan. But they think that everyone else knows how to do that. And the truth is a lot of people don't have that skill and wish they did.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I was just going to say and people have different levels of skill. And so someone might be pretty good budgeting and all of that. And then they get together with somebody who's like a professional at it. And it's like all of a sudden they're made to feel like they're not as qualified.
Well, and yes. And that brings up the topic around money and power in relationships. When one person is super into, money, or maybe they've been really good at investing or what have you. We all have different strengths. Many people, that's not going to be their area of expertise. And so that has to be handled very carefully, because otherwise you can be in a situation where one person feels so disempowered and in difficult, not positive situations, people can be made to feel not very smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they really stop asking questions and feel like they don't have control over this area of their life. And it's not okay. I mean, just because money is not your expertise doesn't mean you're not this amazing, wonderful, smart person with tons to contribute around the subjects of lifestyle and resources and money.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's also, people who get together with somebody and they don't want to be responsible for the other person. So they don't want to give any advice.
Yeah. And that is so true. And initially that can seem like it works great. I call those types of personality types money avoiders, and those sorts of other ways to talk about that. But in the end, that puts an awful lot of pressure on the other person. It might be nice initially to be the one who's in charge of everything, but oh my gosh, then you're feeling the pressure of, well, I sure hope I got the life insurance figured out right, or this figured out right, that the other person's relying on me to know. And, the other thing I would say, particularly the older you get, it can be very dangerous to assume that you're going to be taken care of and things are going to be okay if that other person dies. And, we do see this more, unfortunately, with women that assume that things are set up correctly. And maybe their husbands actually think so too, right? I mean, there's plenty of people that are doing the best that they can.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But then, when the husband dies, is she taking care of the way that she thought that she would? So, even when people are uncomfortable talking about money, you really do want to try to get involved and know that you do have something to add to the discussion. And you do want to make sure, and your beloved probably in all likelihood wants you to feel taken care of should they die. Right? People, of course, want that for the people that they love. But sometimes it's hard to bring up that conversation.
It is. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's always difficult trying to figure out, okay, well, this is obviously something we share, a bill or whatever, but over here, do we or do we not? Right. And people have different opinions about that. So it's just one more thing. That's right.
Yeah. Like we were saying earlier, it also depends on when you re-partner. If you're talking about a re-partner,
that's right.
You may be coming into a new marriage with someone still paying spousal support or child support, or student loans. People have a lot of feelings about these expenses becoming joint or not joint.
Yeah. So what is your suggestion for how people should that sort of situation?
What I think is a great place to start is if you're going to, let's use the marriage example. If you're literally going to marry, which is obviously darn big, important, and serious, then, before then, you really do want to sit down and share everything, meaning let's write down and share with each other all of our assets, all of our savings, and all of our debts and all of our liabilities. Like, let's just lay it all out on the table, which is a very vulnerable. But if this really is the person that you're thinking of spending the rest of your life, and you're, not able to share that, then, this is a caution play, right? So really laying everything out and beginning to have that conversation right there will bring up some of these discussions. For example, okay, student loans, here's what I think about. A lot of times when people lay this out, they'll say, okay, I want to keep paying for this, or the idea of going joint with joint checking is everyone has different thoughts and opinions on that. And that's why sometimes initially it's nice to also share what worked or didn't work about money in your previous relationship. Which is also a very tender subject when you're talking about the ex-spouse, right? But if money was a source of pain, let's say the man you're going to marry used to be married to someone who he's describing as an overspender, he's going to be very sensitive to combining finances. And so I think that's let's talk about that. Let's, again, this could be a beautiful conversation around intimacy and different feelings and your own history around this. There is no one way. A lot of couples will start with just a smaller joint checking where, like you said, let's decide which expenses for the house come out of this. And then they keep their own separate accounts for a while. There's nothing, or maybe forever. You don't
Yeah.
have to go join
Right.
just because you marry someone. But what I think is important is I think it's important to share financial information with the person you're married to. Because if you cannot share financial information with someone that you're marrying, should you be marrying? Right. I mean, again, this is a deep, it's a trust issue, right? It's a trust issue, it's an intimacy issue. It's a vulnerability issue. And it's like, well, bring it on. Let's expand this part of the relationship to be able to talk about these things.
I think that's a very, very important. Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting. We're getting towards the end where we probably should be cutting off. I have one more question for you. What about for couples that don't actually get married, but they live together for 30 years?
We live together for 30 years. Honestly, I think it's all very similar. But here's my caution around that. Yes, we've all heard of the term common law marriage, and some states might consider you married, which is fine. And this is a values thing. There's lots of people nowadays also that don't believe in marriage. I don't personally care if people get married or not. I just want people to be happy, right? You want people to be happy. But my concern is sometimes when people are in a very long-term relationship and they're not married, that's when they are the most vulnerable. When you are married, chances are if the other person dies, the accounts joint accounts in your name, you're going to be the beneficiary as the spouse, the survivor.
Right.
Right. So what I would encourage people is if you're not going to get married, that's great. That's great. Do you want the person that you are, the person that you love, that you live with, do you want them taken care of in the event of your death?
Right.
Yes or no? If you want them taken care of in the event of your death, then you need to take extra steps to make sure that they are taken care of. Because if you're not legally married, that's not going to be as automatic.
Right.
And so you don't want something to happen to you, or because you don't believe in marriage, or again, there's lots of reasons to not get married.
Whatever. Yeah.
Lots and lots of reasons. That's great. But you just want to make sure that there isn't, as a result of that, you die and then the person that you love so much doesn't have what they need. And so it's just, it's another conversation around intimacy and money and we love each other and how we want to, we take care of the people we love.
Yeah. Well, and it's also bottom line, it's a matter of knowledge.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
A lot of people think that it's just going to work just like if they were married, and it doesn't.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's really important to have those conversations and, make sure that that other person is the beneficiary in your retirement accounts. I mean, there's lots of things you absolutely can do, but they're not, not going to be.
And it's relatively easy if you know what it is. It's not difficult, but it is something you have to do in addition to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this is the person that you truly, truly love, then I would consider talking to an estate planning attorney.
Yep.
There's lots of professionals out there that can help you. And no, it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. I just want to make sure that the people that you love are cared for the way that you want them cared for.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. And when it comes to checking accounts or whatever, if you just go talk to the bank, they'll tell you what the things are for the checking account or any other finance, that kind of thing, because they're going to be the ones you're arguing with.
Exactly.
So they're real happy to explain to you. Yeah. No, I can't. I'm not going to be able to do that. You have to do X, Y, and Z for me to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I just want your listeners to know that, we want to make it okay to talk about money. We want it to be normal. We want it to be a healthy conversation. We all are different. And it's kind of fun to share our differences and our thoughts about money, our opinions about money. That's all of our wonderful uniqueness. Yes. But we don't want it to be this secret thing that, like, so many of us are raised with, don't talk about money. And that doesn't serve us as well as adults. And so we want to normalize this and say, it's actually healthy and helpful to be able to talk about it.
Yes. And I think it's also something that women traditionally have not been good having that conversation. I think men are better, but I think it's something we all need to learn.
Yeah, and it's changing, but I agree with you. I mean, traditionally, families didn't talk to their daughters as much about money as they talked to their sons, right? And society and culture has contributed to that, and many things have contributed to that. And it's definitely changing as women become more and more empowered.
Yes.
But we just have to kind of take it in our own hands and say, nope, this is something I want to talk about.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. And particularly for older women,
right?
Because
you want to feel like you can do that.
45 and above, I would say probably, maybe even 40, but right. Definitely above that, because we weren't trained to think that way.
No, I agree. And that's partly why I personally specialize in working with women in midlife who feel great in so many areas of their life. But money is the piece where they don't always feel in control, or they feel stressed or anxious, and I want everyone to feel at choice, that they are living the life that they want to live, and that they can use money as a way to create the life that they love, and not have to be this scary mystery.
Well, with that, I think that's a great way to wrap up in this whole conversation. It kind of brings it all around.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really I love it. If people want to find me, then they can go straight to seattlemoneycoach.com. And what I have for your listeners is there is a free ebook on how to stop stressing about money that they can download. And if you do want to talk with me, then I encourage you to grab a free discovery call, for all those women that we were talking about in midlife that I just love working with. You do a free 20-minute discovery call with me, and I can help you figure out what is keeping you from feeling in control of your money. And you can just click the button on the website at Seattle Money Coach.
All right. Great. And I will put the website in the show notes as well, so people will know where to find it. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you spending the time.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
I love your show, and I think your listeners will enjoy all of it. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. We can keep going back. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, right. So let me just say what I usually do, and it doesn't really apply to this particular show, but I am not a doctor. Neither of us are doctors. This is not medical advice, which you can obviously tell anyways, just from listening. And if you are having any kind of medical problems, please go and see your doctor. But in the meantime, if you're having any money problems, go see Mikelann. There you go.
There we go.
This has been Healthy Tips After 50 with Susan Rosen. To stay on the cutting edge of the most effective health strategies, subscribe to this podcast and let us know what you thought of the show with a comment or like on iTunes. Visit healthytipsafter50.com for this episode's show notes, more resources, and free offers.